Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about just the intensity of the D&D community. So I'll tell you, sometimes, so I have done more videos on the subject of Dungeons and Dragons than anyone in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. By volume of coverage in the video format, I have discussed Dungeons and Dragons more than anyone on the planet at a broader depth than anyone on the planet, period, bar none. I challenge you to send me anyone who could beat my numbers. You can't. I've done I think about 8,000 videos on Dungeons and Dragons. And so sometimes it gets a little lonely, and I'll get into situations like right now I'm doing coverage on Orion Akaba, and people are like, this is an obsession. It's not. It's simply what happens in the Dungeons and Dragons community. And there are times where I'm delighted to see that I'm not the only one. I am very much not the only one. So recently I went to the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo. And actually I was incredibly blessed in that, I was incredibly blessed in that in December of 2024, I went to PAX Unplugged, tons of TTRPG content there. Then in January, I went to Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo in Oaks, PA. And then in March of 2025, I went to EcclesiaCon, right? In Palmyra, New Jersey, right? So I'm like, as deep as I am, I'm getting even deeper and seeing that my level of intensity and adamancy about Dungeons and Dragons is not that uncommon. It really is astounding how many people are really incredibly intense and incredibly adamant about Dungeons and Dragons. So let me give you an example. So I went to Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and they had Frank Menser at this convention. And it's really interesting, even at this tiny convention that only had I think maybe less than 2,500 people at it, there were rock stars who you could not get near, right? A lot of the stars there. I got to meet Professor Dungeon Master in person. Sly Flourish, I was able to meet him. Kelsey Dion, I got within her proximity, and I didn't even try to go and talk to her because I could see there was just a press of people around her, right? And Frank Menser was the same. So Frank Menser was there. So Frank Menser literally designed one of the Beckby boxes. Very, very, very important, hardcore, original Dungeons and Dragons designers, right? Very, very early on, has his own TSR stories, all of that, right? Well, what was really fascinating is he's in his 70s now, right? So they bring him out to the convention, and there was a press of people around him. I didn't even try to go to any of his stuff because, even at a small con like this, he was a celebrity, and I don't like standing in lines. I really just don't like it. So I'm like, I'm not gonna go down that road. It's extreme. I break that rule every now and then, but I'm like, nah. I'd love to meet him. I'd love to shake his hand and all that. But there's just gonna be a press of people around him, and there was constantly. There was just a press of people around him. So one of the things that was really nice was I went to a Philadelphia Gaming Expo, and then I friended a bunch of people. I sent a bunch of Facebook friend requests, and a bunch of people, were like, yeah, hey, we're friends, right? And one of the things I noticed is that Frank Menser is really a contact point in the D&D community. And what they're doing right now, this was incredible. I could not believe what they were doing. So what they're doing right now is literally every scrap of paper, every magazine, every book from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they're collecting them that was ever even remotely connected to TSR. There are communities all over the country who are collecting that material up and sending it to Frank Menser. And then Frank Menser is serving as a contact point. And as a contact point, they're like, we're going to give this to you, Mr. Menser. And he's like, thank you so much. I'm a rally point. I'll take that material. And then he's got people who are literally putting this stuff away in not warehouses, but spaces that are serving as warehouses, garages, people's homes, anywhere that's dry and safe, and this stuff is going to be able to be stored for a little while. And then they get this stuff off to different collectors and people who are interested, right? And I just wanted to explain to you the depths that this goes to, right? This is sound of me. So Frank Menser puts a post up on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey everybody, here is a disposable TSR packing box." I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And it's just pictures of a box, and this box is big enough to, like, it's maybe like 2 feet by a foot and a half by a foot and a half, right? Rectangular, right? And it just has TSR printed on the side, and it's water damaged. It's water damaged, right? Like, it's not even in good condition, right? It's water damaged packing box from TSR, and it has writing on it like, "Hey, good books," or like, I can't even remember what it said. But like, you're also like, oh, I wonder who wrote that. Was that Ed Stark? Was that, it actually wasn't Ed Stark, because he would have been later. He came in like 35, or at like more like right at the end of second. But anyway, so who was that? Was that Moldvay's writing on the box? Is that Gary's writing on the box? And so people are, and what's really blows my mind is people are going to find out. They're literally going to do handwriting analysis on this box, and this water damaged disposable TSR packing box, Frank Menser was starting an auction for it, right? Like an auction, right? To buy a packing box, right? Like, it's like, so sometimes I'm like, oh man, are you too intense about D&D? No, it's just the D&D community is so intense about D&D. And I think what we realize is we're like, like Marvel is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And people are like, oh yeah, I would wait in line for 3 days to get Chris Hemsworth's autograph, right? Today, and they're global stars connected to it. We're in the 80s with D&D. D&D is going to be bigger than ever. It's going to be absolutely massive. And people are collecting every scrap from the last 50 years and saying, this is all museum quality stuff, right? People are literally are bidding against each other to get a water damaged disposable packing box that has TSR printed on it. That's astonishing. Now, I think they're right to do it, but I was just astonished at the level of interest that D&D has. That is incredible. Frank Menser, very cool guy. I got in his proximity. I walked past him a couple times at the convention. For me, that counts, right? Like, and I was within proximity of Gary Gygax. I never got to speak to him, but I walked right past him in 2004 at Gen Con. I'm absolutely amazed at the intensity of the interest in Dungeons and Dragons. And people are right. It is worth our attention. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.